Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Emily Ferrier, here to bring you some uplifting stories in these very hard times. Today is a bit of an exception. Usually we only do American stories, or we try to do majority American stories, but obviously a lot is going on right now, so we're going to be talking about some positive things happening all over the world in this situation. So we live in a world where controversy and atrocity gets more views than uplifting stories. Because of that, our top media outlets have been incentivized to publish the most triggering aspects of society. For a long time, I've strayed away from the news. I didn't want to be informed, but I really just couldn't stand waking up every day to the worst aspects of the world. Recently, though, I decided to dive back in head first, and I wanted to offer some alternative dialogues, not just by sharing uplifting stories, but also going headfirst into current events and still coming out with inspiring and empowering perspectives. This comes from an article on the Good News Network, so this is not my writing, just to be clear. I won't lie, it was a big challenge, and for the first couple of weeks, I was feeling extremely heavy and drained. I honestly wasn't sure if I'd be able to continue with the show and was close to giving up on the project. But I was entirely committed, not only of being capable with the world myself, but to share that capability with the larger spiritual and conscious community. So I kept going. Around week 3, I sat in meditation and I had a huge realization. It's not new. It's awareness. That one idea shifted everything for me. Let me back up a bit. I'll explain what it means and why this was such a huge shift for me. Back in college, when I used to watch, read, or listen to the news, I'd become overcome with sadness at the state of the world. I'd think, how could this be happening? We should be further along than this. But recently, with further reflection on ideas like all suffering is simply arguing with reality, I decided to attempt to re-enter the news with that perspective. I hope to stay empowered and full by setting the intention of complete acceptance of all of it. If everything in the news is truly a part of the world we live in, I saw an opportunity to increase my capacity to be with that reality and to accept it. That is where I began that journey. But as I mentioned, after just a couple of weeks, I was already feeling drained and having trouble finding that place of acceptance. Then came this idea in meditation. The news isn't new. It's awareness. That's when it all clicked into place. I had trouble accepting the news when I believed it was all happening suddenly out of nowhere. I unconsciously believed something like everything was great, but now there's this atrocity that's happening. Can I do anything about it? Maybe. But with that recognition, that this current state of the world exists regardless about whether I know it or not, I found a little pocket of peace that I didn't know was possible. Here's what changed. Every news article I read became a sign of awareness to something that was already present. That little shift of perspective altered the way that I viewed everything that came across my screen. And as many have come to see, in the spiritual and transformational spaces, awareness is the first step to change. When we understand a limiting belief or personal habit, we have the power to make changes and face it head on. We can change it. That means all the articles I was reading, even and especially those highlighting the worst aspects of the world, were actually signs that we were ready to shift and deal with those things as a collective. Huge scandals, the rejection of basic human rights, articles about climate change and nuclear threats. It was all ready to be seen in a new light. That's why the news reports such things. I recognized how excited I got when something new arose within me to be seen, heard, transmuted into fresh, higher perspective. Why was I looking at the world any different? The news is awareness. It's the global spotlight of awareness, shining on everything that's ready to be transmuted into a newer, higher truth. From that higher vantage point, there was nothing I couldn't deal with. I found myself happy to see attention drawn to the challenging global crises because I knew how many other people were seeing it too. I knew now a window for change was opening. If we want to press deeper into our unity and oneness, it takes including all aspects of our planet and collective in our healing process, including our darkest shadows. That's why the highlighting of the really terrible aspects of our society is actually a really good thing. I'm not going to say that I'm 100% joyous in the face of challenging stories, but the more I lean in, especially with this perspective, the more I recognize my capacity to be with the world as it expands. It's entirely possible to walk out of the news every day feeling uplifted and inspired from watching the global spotlight of awareness bringing to light the shadows every day. So if you decide to open up that news app and start scrolling, remember, it's nothing new. The world is here, whether or not we report it or see it. Instead, these articles represent the very awareness that transmutes the shadow to the light. It's not atrocity. It's the awareness of atrocity. Feel it? It's the truth about our global scene. Every day, every article, there's more awareness and a better global society for future generations. As more than 60 million Italian citizens are forced to wait out the nation's COVID-19 outbreak, their neighborhoods and communities took to their balconies to lift each other's spirits with song. So when we are going through all these stories today, like the one I just mentioned, let's keep all that in our perspectives. We're going to look at these with a different mindset, and we're going to try to be with the world right now, rather than against it. We're going to accept what's happening, and we're going to talk about the positive things coming out from within it. So, with that in mind, we'll be going into today's episode. We're going to be talking about the tough stories to a point, but we're going to be talking about the positive aspects of it and the good things about society coming together as a whole during these really rough and awful times. And I hope you can stay with us throughout this. because now more than ever, it's important for us to be together and be supportive of each other and especially of the world as a whole. So stay tuned when we return.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about perspective and how we're going to be entering into the discussions today. So I hope we all are able to receive it in that way. So as more than 60 million Italian citizens are forced to wait out the nation's COVID-19 outbreak from behind their closed doors, entire neighborhoods and communities are taking to their balcony to lift each other's spirits with song. From Salerno to Naples, in the south Turin to Palermo, in the north, quarantined Italians have been filmed singing songs and playing instruments with each other from the windows of their homes. Some of the Italians have led their neighbors through rousing renditions of opera solos. Others have joined together for triumphant soccer chants, and still others were being filmed singing the national anthem. The spontaneous sing-alongs even spurred Italian musicians to bring their instruments to the window, from harps and guitars to their pots and pans. Regardless of the musical content, the trend has served as a much-needed morale boost for quarantined citizens across the country. And there are many other positive things coming out of this, such as a woman has started doing grocery runs for her older neighbors to reduce their exposure to the coronavirus. If you need to work from home because of the COVID-19 virus, like myself, maybe you'll get an inspirational jolt by taking some time to help your elderly neighbors, which is exactly what this North Carolina woman did. Becky Hoffler, who works at Duke University, was talking to her grandfather on the phone when he mentioned that he was going out grocery shopping. She was concerned for him because the elderly population is most at risk of catching the novel coronavirus. But he lives in New Jersey, so she couldn't help out. That's when she got the idea to make grocery runs for her senior neighbors in lieu of helping out her grandpa. Am I excited that I'm probably going to get a sweet loaf of banana bread for my neighbor Patty because of this? Yes. The spunky Hoffler told WNCN News. Either way, though, I think being able to help your neighbor is one of the most American things you can do. Her next-door neighbor, Patty, asked for paper towels, fresh fruit, and flour. I was really lucky to find the paper towels. That whole aisle is almost empty. And some of the flour likely went into the homemade banana bread given to Becky to say thanks. Hoffler also walked down the housing community for seniors living at the end of her cul-de-sac. She talked to people on their porches and introduced herself and the offer of kindness. They told me, I could post a sign with my information near the mailbox station so all members of the community would be able to see it. No one has responded to the sign yet, but one of the women I talked to said she'll call me in the next few days, and she's thankful that she could stop feeling anxious about having to go to the store now. Becky has posted on a local Facebook group to try and get the word out to see if anyone needs help. In these situations, when the community steps up, you really lessen the pressure on first responders and medical personnel, she said in an email. If you're able to decrease, even by a little bit, the number of patients that have to seek care because they've been exposed to something, it's good for the community as a whole. Utilizing people power is one of the best ways that we can combat the virus. And she's not the only one. This group of Japanese students is proving to the world that they will not be letting the novel coronavirus outbreaks ruin their fun. Since Japanese schools have closed down in the face of COVID-19 and will likely remain closed until after spring vacation, this elementary school boy and his friends decided to host their online graduation ceremony on Minecraft. The graduation, which was captured in a video, was hosted in an elaborate virtual auditorium, complete with diplomas, speeches, music, and joyous festivities all around. The 12-year-old boy's father later proposed a series of videos and photos of the event in social media in hopes that it would serve as bright news that shines in a gloomy social situation and opens up the way that games are perceived. They spent all day online together playing video games and laughing, he wrote on his Twitter thread, which has been shared 1,000 times since it was published earlier this week. And one more story. A Scottish convenience store has given away thousands of dollars in free toilet paper, antibacterial hand wash, tissues, and anti-inflammatories to seniors staying home amidst the novel coronavirus warnings. Customers over the age of 65 and those with mobility issues facing self-isolation can either pick up the free goods at the day-to-day convenience store in Dryla, Edinburgh, or have the coronavirus kits delivered to their house free by just calling the shop. 34-year-old shop owner Zahid Iqbal has already given away more than 1,000 kits, and he says that it hopes it sets a good example for other consumers and businesses that have been left bare from panic buying. Since each pack costs about £5 to make, Iqbal said the initiative has already cost his business about £5,000, about £5,000, which is over $6,000, not including the cost of fuel for home deliveries. He's also considering making food bags with pasta and tinned goods as panic buying leaves store shelves empty, with supermarkets struggle to meet demand. We've given away more than 1,000 now, and that's just over the weekend. It's about time we need to stick together. The idea came to Iqbal while accompanying his parents to a local supermarket where they encountered a shocking amount of empty shelves. We have a lot of customers from the local care homes, as well as disabled customers, who can't get hand sanitizers, loo rolls, or anything. We just want to set a good example in this world. Right now, we need to do our part for the community. I think it's very important. I can feel how people feel out there. We want to help out for as long as we can manage. Everybody needs to be doing their bit. This week, I was planning on doing food bags. If we run out of toilet rolls, the next thing we're going to do is pasta. If there's a lockdown, people need to look after themselves. The satisfaction that you get helping people out is just amazing, he concluded. We need more people like Iqbal in this world. The generosity is unbelievable and unnecessary, but very much appreciated. It's pretty incredible to be doing that. So good for you. And thank you for doing your part above and beyond. When we come back, we're going to move away from this topic for a little bit. We're going to talk about an article, Positivity of Growing Old.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about the generosity of a small-time business owner giving away packages to people over 65 that are in need of supplies for the lockdowns. And now, growing older is inevitable and a privilege for those who survive their youth. But accepting changes in your body and lifestyle can be a hard pill to swallow for some. In fact, in the UK, there are an average of 5,400 Google searches each month for the best anti-aging cream. But what are the positives of aging? Is anybody shouting about them? The Office for National Statistics recently revealed that the number of over 85s in the UK is set to increase from 1.6 million in 2018 to 3 million by 2043 as more people reach their silver senior years. It's time to celebrate aging and the benefits that it brings. A recent survey of 2,000 adults over the age of 50 sought to uncover their perceptions of aging. Most importantly, it aimed to discover the things that they liked about being older and the benefits we all have to look forward to. The respondents, all living in the UK, were given a set of questions and a list of aspects of aging to choose from. Overall, 25% of respondents felt very positively about aging. Nearly half of the women, 47%, either agreed or somewhat agreed that their self-confidence has grown with age. 41% also felt their sense of fulfillment has increased too. Meanwhile, 43% of men also believe their self-confidence has increased, and 40% believe their sense of fulfillment has developed too. So, what are the best things about aging? The survey says, number 1, life experience. Number 2, being comfortable in your own skin. Number 3, having a greater sense of self and gratitude for the smaller things in life. 4, independence and freedom, perhaps related to not being tied down to jobs or family. Number 5, the ability to let things go. The cities that prove to have the most positive outlook in getting older might surprise you. Belfast came out on top, closely followed by Newcastle and Leicester. In case you have difficulty finding the positive aspects of aging, Julie Jennings, Department of Independent Occupational Therapy, has compiled some tips on how to maintain a healthy and happy mindset as you age. A survey was conducted by one poll on behalf of HSL, a company that works with Julie to make handcrafted furniture for more ergonomic in UK. So here's the advice from the independent occupational therapist, Julie Jennings. As an occupational therapist, I felt privileged to work with many older people who've inspired the richness of lives that they've led and continue to lead, despite a multitude of health impairments. In my experience, the concept of being young is still largely image and society driven. It is often interesting to understand what getting older means to people. For some, it's the outward appearance. Losing one's youth is therefore a signal of the changes to come. For others, however, the process of aging is not about how one looks, but how they feel. This group of people are usually less bothered with the concept of anti-aging, but rather desire to remain strong, fit, and active. I help people to focus on the positive aspects that aging brings, the wealth of knowledge that they've acquired, the wisdom of age, and the achievements that they've reached, and often the wonderful people they've acquired around them along the way. So here's Julie's top tips for maintaining health, agility, and a happy mindset. Keep your mind and body active. Try new hobbies. And learn new skills, as this keeps you current and encourages making new friends. Enjoy everything, but in moderation. Having a balance is key. Having regular exercise plans that include an element of cardiovascular exercise, such as running or bicycling, or maybe even swimming if you're so inclined. This helps promote healthy heart and lung function. Strengthening will help assist bone density and flexibility for joint range of motion and movement is very important. Number 4, incorporating 30 to 60 minutes of daily moderate exercise into your routine can reap significant rewards, such as improving your mindset, boosting your immune system, which could be very important, reducing stress, and assisting in developing healthy sleep habits, which, as we've heard on previous pods, is one of the most important things that you can do for your body. A healthy night's sleep is wildly underestimated and not valued enough in society. There's all those sleep when you're dead. It's not exactly the case. You should be getting a healthy amount of sleep every night if you really want to lead a healthy lifestyle. And her final tip that she deems probably the most important: control what you can and plan as much as you can for the inevitable, but enjoy the todays. I think that's an important lesson for everyone, no matter what stage you are in life. Control what you can and plan for the inevitable, but enjoy the todays. While we're in self-isolation, I think we should remember to try and stay positive, because the positivity is what's going to keep us together. We can enjoy today's. We can do some fun things together. And towards the end of the pod, I'll talk about some ideas of what you can do while you're self-isolating. Some ideas that I think are good ideas. So we'll talk about that at the end. And when we return from the break, we're going to talk about some very positive and lovely things happening in the state of California. So we will be talking about that when we come back from the break. So don't go anywhere.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about top tips for aging gracefully. And now, in California, Governor Gavin Newsom has turned over 283 state-owned buildings and properties at no cost in order to house citizens sleeping on the streets. The properties include state-owned undeveloped lots, fairgrounds, armories, and other government buildings. The move comes in the wake of other housing initiatives launched since Newsom took office in January of 2019, including deploying emergency shelters in the form of mobile homes for the homeless. Let's call it what it is. It's a disgrace that the richest state in the richest nation is failing to properly house and heal the humanely how we treat so many of our people, Newsom said in his State of the State address, February of 2019. The rampant homelessness problem in California is normally attributed to low-income housing options, the lack of low-income housing options. And Newsom has proposed $70 million for the purpose of getting this housing built and getting people in fast as possible. This is on the top of the $1.6 billion that has already been allocated for homeless services and other projects. The state said that they would offer properties in local governments for $1 leases, and said it had earmarked $650 million in state emergency homelessness aids to build out sites. But the local governments are charged with reviewing the states and making final decisions about housing people there. Homelessness is the most populous U.S. state, has soared to around 150,000 individuals, with 41,000 of those being chronically homeless over a long term. Also in his address, Newsom called for allowing exemptions from the state's stringent environmental regulations so that homeless shelters can be built more quickly, speeding up the process and reducing the red tape. According to Reuters, the time these properties sit in environmental review has allowed for those who don't want shelters and low-income housing developed in their neighborhoods to organize and derail constructions. In other news, in Denver, Colorado, the pricing continues to rise. The pricing of housing continues to rise, but opportunities to create low-income housing are expensive and take years to build. So when the Quality Inn and suites on Quebec Street went up for sale, the president of the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless saw a golden opportunity. John Parvensky snapped up the 139-room complex for $8.4 million, secured with a mixture of private, city, and state funds, and completed for some brief renovations before christening it Fusion Studios. Fusion Studios, serving a variety of people in need, represents the 17th building that has opened in 3 decades of work. Rooms are expected to be available for the people who come right off the street or from shelters across the city as soon as the end of the month. For renters, vouchers can be secured by prospective tenants from the state and city to ensure no more than 30% is required from their incomes for rent. Parvensky said, on average, tenants can manage about $100 a month, with a lot of it coming from other benefits, such as disability payments received. The floor and room plan is divided up by a person's circumstance rather than size and luxury. 28 rooms will be set aside for those awaiting trial for low-level crimes, such as public urination or trespassing. Another 10 are reserved for homeless folks who find themselves frequenting Denver public hospitals. For individuals looking to move on and other forms of affordable and permanent housing, or who have housing currently being constructed for them, another 25 rooms have been set aside. Britta Fisher, head of the Denver Housing Department, called Fusion Studios practically instant housing. We all know that we need more housing units, and we need them quickly, she told the Denverite during Tuesday's opening ceremony. I truly hope we can replicate this model and partnerships at our other sites in Denver. Ever since the government of Denver launched a program that paid the homeless people to work for the city, 284 people have participated over the course of last year. Now, 110 of the participants have found long-term work as a result, 15 of which have been hired by the city. The Denver Day Works program, which launched in November, paid homeless residents $12.50 per hour to perform public service work for the city. No background checks required. All participants had to do was show up for 3 to 6 hour shifts. Even residents who lacked identification were given supplementary help so they could be given the same experience. When participants finished their shifts, the program's administrator would also offer financial planning services at no additional cost. The work varied from mulching flower beds in Denver's parks to performing clerical work at a local library. By the time the initiative's pilot period ended, over 10,000 hours of work and $109,000 in wages had been paid to participants involved in the program. In order to avoid the wait list that developed as a result of the initiative's popularity, contractors planned on adding 2 more days of shift opportunities in the week's schedule, which would allow for 5 days of work for participants in total during the coming year. They also hope to partner with more state organizations so that they can provide more work shifts to women and homeless people with disabilities and minorities. If you're ready and able and willing to better yourself, get up and do something rather than just being stuck, Denver Day Works is there, says Crystal, a program participant. They'll help you with anything. They got me through a lot of tough situations when we didn't have anything. They were there. So that provides a lot of hope in California and Denver for people that are struggling quite a bit. And those numbers might increase soon. So there are good things happening, and that will continue to happen. And when we come back, we have some positive news coming out for parents with children suffering from autism. So we're going to talk about that when we come back from the break. So don't go anywhere because there's more to come. Stay tuned.
Pets bring such joy to our lives, and the GSMC Pets podcast is here to share in that joy. We'll tell stories of pets finding their forever homes, acting in unexpected ways, being helpful, or just being silly. Whether you love dogs, cats, llamas, reptiles, fish, or you've never met an animal you didn't like, the GSMC Pets podcast is for you.
Welcome back. When we left off from the break, we were talking about the things that Denver and California are doing to help people suffering from low incomes or suffering from homelessness. And now, parents of children on the autism spectrum are rejoicing over this new line of shoes from Vans that have been designed specifically for kids with sensory issues. As part of the brand's Autism Awareness Collection, the 8 pairs of shoes have been developed with a focus on soothing the senses through sound, touch, and appearance. Since children with autism often have trouble tying shoelaces, this new line of sneakers is made of slip-on models and shoes that can be fitted on the foot with a single strap, hook and loop closure. According to everyone who knows him, Principal Lou Rielo has been a fantastic educator for over 20 years, and he's recently had the chance to evoke his style of compassion among a packed house in an auditorium for his graduation. One of Carmel High School students, Jack Higgins, who has autism, he's so sensitive to noises that he plugs his ears even when only anticipating them. Being nonverbal, it took Jack 8 years to graduate, and his parents wanted to be able to celebrate this milestone and achievement and walk across the stage with his peers. But what about the loud cheering and clapping? Jack's parents approached the principal about their son, Rielo, and school leaders came up with a solution. He is a wonderful member of our student community, said Principal Rielo as he took to the stage to prepare the audience for what was to come. In a large gymnasium with 2,200 people accustomed to cheering, would it be possible for them to remain quiet? An amazing thing took place, wrote the California principal after the ceremony when the schools uploaded their video. At graduation, the student body and several thousand individuals were asked not to clap or cheer so that Jack could participate, and what followed was nothing short of a miracle. So this kind of story is why these shoes from Vans are really important. The shoes were designed with soothing color palettes in mind. Since 1966, Vans has stood as a champion of individuality and self-expression. The brand's commitment continues with the release of sensory, inclusive footwear designs as part of the Autism Awareness Collection, said the company in a press release. To be more inclusive to common sensory sensitivities, Vans has worked with the International Board of Credentialing and Continuing Education Standards to create designs utilizing Vans' Comfy Cush technology for the day comfort and ease of footwear for adults, kids, and toddlers. The company has also pledged to donate a minimum of $100,000 in shoe sales, the proceeds going to A Escape Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to teaching children with autism how to skateboard. In the press release, they've also said that the proceeds from the collection enable A-Ski to teach 4,000 children how to skateboard. And this March you can join to support the awareness for autism. The footwear is actually available online and in Vans retail locations. So, what sorts of things do they have? They have enhanced comfort in their soles, comfy, cushy for people with sensitivities, and they have the slip-ons, Velcro, easy ties, stuff that will make it very easy for them, and with many features such as the sight and touch with the calming color palettes, a defined sense of standards that are appropriate for individuals with autism and sensitivities. The cushy onsole feels like walking on a cloud, featuring a co-molded construction of foam and rubber for the perfect combination of both comfort and grip. It also includes rubber onsoles, offering durability and traction. The canvas and textile uppers that focus on tongue stabilization, simplified in a one-piece interior with heel pull tabs for added arch support, and moisture-wicking lining materials through the interior of the shoes. So, the sensory-friendly footwear and apparel collection, created with the help of the International Board of Credentialing and Continuing Education Standards, focuses on sensitive touches, featuring calming colors, sturdy canvas textile, co-molded construction of foam and rubber onsoles, simplified one-piece interiors, moisture-wicking heel pull tabs, and soft, cushy onsoles. So this is a huge, new, innovative thing that was made and is very incredible for students with autism. And one more quick story. Graduating from high school is already a significant event for most students, but this student's inspiring commencement speech was particularly noteworthy. Ahmed Ali is a nonverbal student who's been attending the Minneapolis public school system for the last 3 years. Once he was ready to graduate, the school, which offers additional services and resources to special needs students, was asked for a commencement address using speech software that he developed alongside a speech pathologist during his time in the program. What he said is, "Your life is a relay race. The track is your life. Every time you achieve something, you pass the baton to the next person. Guess who you're passing the baton to? It's you. Each stage of your life, you're passing it new on to you. It's not the end of the line for you, but the new you in a beautiful world." It's pretty incredible what people can do with a little extra help. When we come back, today's day in history, when we return.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about the incredible things that can happen when you give the extra support that people need for their learning. And now, happy St. Patrick's Day. Today is March the 17th in my recording, which is the annual holiday where Americans celebrate all things Irish. It began in New York City, with immigrants from Ireland for the first time honoring their religious patron saint at the Crown and Thistle Tavern 263 years ago today. Lenten restrictions on drinking alcohol are officially lifted amongst Christians for this day. The city's 255-year-old St. Patrick's Day parade is the biggest parade in the world. And that started in 1756. If you are Irish, you may still be celebrating this today in maybe a smaller way since we shouldn't be going outside. But if you wanted a couple fun facts about Ireland, or about St. Patrick's Day, or a couple surprising facts, rather, we'll talk about that. So, the real St. Patrick was actually born in Britain. Much of what's known about St. Patrick's life has been interwoven with folklore and legend. Historians generally believe that St. Patrick was the saint of Ireland, but he was born in Britain, not Ireland, near the end of the 4th century. At age 16, he was kidnapped by Irish raiders and sold as a slave to the Celtic priest in Northern Ireland. After toiling for 6 years as a shepherd, he escaped back to Britain and eventually returned to Ireland as a Christian missionary. And there were no snakes around for St. Patrick's to banish from Ireland. Among the legends associated with St. Patrick is that he stood atop an Irish hillside and banished snakes from Ireland, prompting all serpents to slither away into the sea. But in fact, research suggests that snakes never occupied the Emerald Isle in the first place. There are no signs of snakes in the country's fossil record, and water has surrounded Ireland since the last glacial period. Before that, the region was covered in ice and would have been too cold for reptiles. Leprechauns are likely based on Celtic fairies. The red-haired, green-clothed leprechaun is commonly associated with St. Patrick's Day. The original Irish name for these figures is leprechaun, meaning small-bodied fellow. Belief in leprechauns likely stems from a Celtic belief in fairies, tiny men and women who could use their magical powers to serve for good or evil. In Celtic folktales, leprechauns were cranky souls and responsible for mending shoes from the other fairies. The shamrock was actually considered a sacred plant. The three-leaf clover has been associated with Ireland for centuries. It was called Simroy by the Celts and was considered a sacred plant that symbolized the arrival of spring. According to legend, St. Patrick used the plant as a visual guide when explaining the Holy Trinity. By the 17th century, the shamrock had become a symbol of emerging Irish nationalism. The first Patrick's Day parade was held in America, but we already know that. The first St. Patrick's Day was held in 1601 in a Spanish colony in what is now St. Augustine, Florida. Apparently, the St. Patrick's Day celebration a year earlier was organized by the Spanish colony's Irish vicar, Ricardo Arthur. More than a century later, homesick Irish soldiers serving in the English military marched in Boston in 1737 and in New York on March 17th. The Irish were once scorned in America. While Irish Americans are now proud to showcase their heritage, the Irish were not always celebrated by fellow Americans. Beginning in 1845, the devastating potato blight caused widespread hunger throughout Ireland, which approximately 1 million people perished, another 2 million abandoned their land in the largest single population movement of the 19th century. Most of the exiles, nearly a quarter of the Irish nation, came to the shores of the United States, and when they arrived, the Irish refugees were looked down upon as disease-ridden, unskilled, and a drain on welfare budgets. Corned beef and cabbage was actually an American invention. The meal that became St. Patrick's Day staple across the country, corned beef and cabbage, was actually an American invention. Ham and cabbage eaten in Ireland, of course, corned beef actually offered a cheaper substitute for impoverished immigrants. Irish Americans living in the slums of Lower Manhattan in the late 19th century and early 20th purchased leftover corned beef from ships returning from the tea trade in China. The Irish would boil this 3 times, the last time with cabbage, to remove some of the brine. And other things on this day in history, the rubber band was invented in 1845. The Kingdom of Italy was founded in 1861. A showing of 71 Vincent van Gogh paintings in Paris 11 years after his death created a sensation in 1901. 110 years ago, the Campfire Girls was founded in 1910. The National Gallery of Art opened in Washington, D.C. in 1941. Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, France, and the United Kingdom started the Treaty of Brussels, a precursor to the NATO agreement, in 1948. A referendum to end apartheid in South Africa was passed by 68.7 voters in 1992, and on this day, in 1978, just like a very apt thing for St. Patrick's Day, U2 won a talent contest in Limerick, Ireland. Winnings included $500 and studio time to record a demo and audition for the CBS Ireland record label. Sponsored by the Evening Express and Guinness Harp Lager, the Limerick Civic Week Pop 78 competition afforded them the opportunity to make the first U2 recording and earned them some much-needed recognition. And 101 years ago today, Nat King Cole was born, a jazz pianist and vocalist. He dropped out of high school in Chicago to pursue a music career at age 15 and reached the heights of stardom in the mid-20th century, recording over 100 hit songs, often with a trio that became the model for small jazz ensembles, including the 1951 gem Unforgettable. Many people know his voice alone from his famous rendition of the Christmas song. Other hits include The Very Thought of You, The Way You Look Tonight, and many others. He is one of the most important recording artists in history of America. He also acted in films and performed on Broadway and passed away at age 45 of lung cancer, but is survived by his daughter Natalie Cole, who carried on the family legacy. So, that's it for today. And I hope this helped lift your spirits, at least for a little while. And I hope you continue to look at the news with a little bit of joy in the coming days. Thank you for listening to the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you, please remember to subscribe to our show and to write a nice review. And if you could rate the episode, really helps. Please follow us on all social medias. That's Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Thank you so much. Stay positive and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast.